Listen to another episode of Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. This is the place where you're entitled to Brad's opinion. And now for your host, Brad Allard.
Well, another wonderful week in store in the neighborhood. Beautiful day. I have Tim Good, who's running for the Republican nomination for district attorney. We're going to talk about what possessed him to run for political office, because it's an arduous experience. I've talked to several candidates, and they, it's part of the job, but it's still pretty tough. So we're going to talk about his background, his qualifications, what goals, what he sees as concerns. By the way, Mr. Good, if most people watch this on their time, not real time. They'll watch it later today or tomorrow. Okay. Listen to it on Apple and Spotify. But we do have real-time comments. I'll be on that screen right there. And, so if somebody chimes in, they'll and ask you questions. We can try to work them in like that.
Sounds good to me.
But I would say the majority of people hear it when they can because, I hear some people work for a living. I don't know. But anyway, I look forward to hearing about this because, I've had concerns about certain elements of what's going on in Johnson County, not so much in the DA's office, but just overall because, most people that listen to the show know I'm a former school teacher, and there's some trends that bother me, say the least, and maybe you can address some of those, some criminal trends. But anyway, we'll get into that. But let's run through the sponsors right quick. First, we have Auto at our place. I was sure you've been there before.
I have.
Yeah, it's a
fantastic place.
Yeah, it is. It really, Auto is a good owner in the sense he and I are trying to work out a date to talk about his new venture, that Gina's Pizza. If you lived here in Burleson, do you live in the Burleson area?
I live in Burleson, yes, sir.
Okay, everybody knows Gina's Pizza. It's been around forever and a day. It's opening up in about a month, and we're going to talk about that when we get the first open date. But our place is always a great place, and I go there about 5 to 6 times a month, and it's always a good experience. Also, thank you to Wild Cigar and Culture over at the Standard off of Hidden Creek. It's, do you like cigars?
I've been there 1,000 times.
1,000 times, really?
Fantastic place, yes, sir.
Yeah, it's a good place, and the owner is a former student of mine, and he and his partner really have a nice place. I think it's the nicest place in town for that kind of atmosphere.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Also, no cover charge like most places have, so it's a fantastic place to drop in.
And you actually can hear yourself think. That's what I like. You walk in there and have a conversation, and it's not like shouting over the TVs or whatnot. I go there in the afternoon sometimes just to, little sponsor care, talk to Nathan about what they got planned for. Like, I'll be talking to him this week about the Super Bowl plans they have. But they always seem to have a pretty eclectic group there. A lot of different people.
They do.
A lot of them working on their laptops, on this other stuff. It's a good place to go. So thank you, Chris and Nathan, for what you do. Also, Tiffany Nico at Local Life. This magazine goes out to about 30,000 homes. I don't know if you're advertising with her, but it's something to consider.
Okay.
Assuming you win the primary, are you going to have a Democratic opponent?
No, this is winner take all.
Okay. Well, she has a really, really effective advertising magazine.
Okay.
It comes out the very first of the month, and it's it not only goes to, like I mentioned, 30,000 homes, but it also, I always see multiple copies in a lot of the retail places, like the next one coming up, Southern Gym. Southern Gym, is there a Mrs. Good?
There is.
Okay, then Mrs. Good needs to take you to this place.
Okay. Oh, no.
Yeah, Southern. Well, my wife works there, so
Okay.
I know what you're saying, because my wife comes home and with pictures on the phone. Look at this beautiful ring. Look at this. And, hey, we got to pay bills, But anyway, Southern Gym. It's not that it's so expensive though. They have high end stuff, and they have affordable, stuff for the rest of us, And
Valentine's is coming up.
That's exactly right. You just when you think you're out of the woods at Christmas, no, Valentine's is there. Plus, next week from Thursday on the 8th, they're going to have a bourbon and bling night. So guys like yourself can go in there and have a glass of bourbon and
soften up.
Yeah. Well, Gayla, if you ever met Gayla Moore, she's very Southern. All right, hence the name. And so she likes to entertain and entertain properly. And so it's not like you can go in there and it's going to be cheap stuff. She prides herself on her Southern hospitality.
Okay.
So it's really a nice.
That's really good.
Yeah. So it's going to be fun. I'm going to be there. Also, thank you to Brenda Ramirez at Two Maids. This is one of my newer sponsors, and Brenda. I really like Brenda and Waystream's business. They are a cleaning service, and they do homes, they do businesses, they do industrial cleaning, they do the whole 9 yards. and you pay them based on the quality of their service, not on an hourly rate. You rate how good the job was, how well it was done, and then you pay based on that, as opposed to just it's X amount per hour or per job or whatever else. So the number is 817-764-0733. Taylor, probably tomorrow we need to put that on there.
Just text me the phone. I'll get it on there.
Okay, good. But 817-764-0733 or twomaidscleaning.com/Burleson. But she's pretty happy. She's a big Kansas City fan, so she's from Kansas City. So I see her in a networking group, BNI group, that I go to. Also, speaking of BNI, Old Pro Roofing, John Williams, 817-734. Have him check your roof out. Make sure it's in good shape. If it isn't, he'll tell you. If it is, he'll tell you. He's not going to upsell you. 817-734-2756. These are Burleson folks, or their main location is in Old Town, so you know where to find them. And we haven't had bad weather lately, but when we did back in June, John was pretty busy. I saw a lot of Old Pro signs, and so a lot of people know of them already. And also, if you're looking to refinance or get a new mortgage or buy a new home, Camco Mortgage, Sammy Campbell, Candy Gow. Sammy and Candy been doing this for 20 years, and they now are doing it for themselves. And Sammy can be reached at 817-776-4592, Candy at 817-925-2661. They know what's going on with the rates. They know what's going on with all this hair pulling in the housing market and all this other. So you definitely want to check them out. Also, just a reminder, on Friday, we have that Snowman Smash for Fitability TX. Are you familiar with this outfit by any chance? Fitability TX.
I am not, no.
She'll be on the show Thursday to promote it some more. Jessica Valley-Reams, I'm referring to. And she does fitness programs for people with mental disabilities. She has a studio out on East Renfro, and I've been there. And people with autism, maybe people that are recovering from strokes or whatever else, she helps them keep fit. With appropriate exercises for their situation. And so she has a big fundraiser at Lost Oak at 6:00. So that's always a good place to go.
It is.
Okay, well, Mr. Good, on a personal, tell us whatever you want us to know about your personal life, so to speak. Oh, yeah. And
Keep that mic close.
There you go.
I did get a grab.
Yeah, well, your mic needs to be a little closer. So.
Okay. So my name's Timothy Good. I'm running for District Attorney of District 18, which is Johnson, Somerville County. I'm a Christian, husband, father, conservative Republican. Been licensed for over, I think, about 14 years now.
Where'd you go to law school?
Liberty University in Virginia.
Okay. Did you go or do it online?
No, I went. So the online, they have an online thing they do for paralegals and some other stuff. A law school, med school, it has on campus.
So you were in Virginia this time?
I was.
Oh, how'd you like it?
I enjoyed it a lot. So I love Texas. Met my wife up there. When we started dating, when I went up there, I had a couple goals. One was I was not going to marry anybody out of law school. Two, I was not going to marry a Yankee. My wife is from Chicago.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, so is Otto, so I got to be nice.
So when we started dating, I said, if this relationship goes anywhere, it's going back to Texas. So I enjoyed Virginia, but the plan was always to go back to Texas. So when I proposed to her in D.C., her next thing after it was, are we moving to Texas? So yeah, absolutely.
How does she like it?
She loves it. I think she's become a little more Texan than I am. She's really big into barbecue, not just eating it. She does briskets and ribs. She smokes everything in our house.
How about that? Any children?
I have two children. Their ages are, I got a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, two sons.
Oh, so you'll be having to choose schools. Are you going to do homeschooling by any chance?
No, I think we're doing maybe private school. Still working that out. So my son does go to a private school in Cleveland right now, my oldest 4-year-old.
Well, I asked you that because that's, as a former public school teacher, a lot of people come to me and ask my opinion about it, which this is not what the show's about, but I just was wondering because, you went to Grace Prep, you told me before, and then you go to Liberty. So, you have a lot of experience with the private Christian environment. So I just wondered if that was also something you'd want for your own kids. When my kids were small, even if I was a public school teacher, I sent mine to Holy Cross here in town.
Yeah.
And so it was, and then when they got up to a certain age, we went into BISD schools, and it worked out just fine. But anyway, so.
Well, schooling is a big issue, particularly for parents right now. I mean, it's hard for us. We're just starting with our oldest. But trying to navigate that thing is definitely. I mean, we see all the DEI stuff going into school, and then
Well, people are concerned about that. I know this is kind of off the topic, but they're concerned that is this happening in BISD, and it really isn't, because here's the secret about teaching. Is that teachers are so, at least at my experience, were so pushed for time. They didn't have time to get into all this wild junk. It's like, we got to get through this material. We got, STAR tests, we got AP tests, we got all this other stuff. Bam, bam, bam. We don't have time to indulge in these weird theories and whatever else. And again, and the majority of the secondary history teachers in particular are coaches, and they are good teachers, but they also got a real full-time job outside of the classroom, so they don't have time for all this. But anyway, I'm taking up your time. So anyway, as far as your work experience, what is that?
So when I first got out of law school, my plan was to do real estate and transaction law, the most probably boring thing I could think of. But that was my goal. But when I got out of law school, it was the 2007, 2010 kind of period of the economic crash, the housing market, right? There were no jobs at that point. And so my first job out of law school was actually doing something I had no intent to do, which was criminal law, and then it was do criminal defense. So I did that for about a year or two. After that, I switched to, I was like, I really want to do prosecution, so I've switched to prosecution after that. Been prosecuting for over a decade, board certified in criminal law. And I think that's kind of unique. My opponent is as well. But there's only like 785 attorneys out of the 110,000 attorneys in Texas that are board certified in criminal law.
So we have 110,000 attorneys here?
Maybe too many, right?
Well, I don't know. I guess if there's always room for a good one, but I'm just saying that's more than I thought.
No, there's a bunch. There's a bunch. It's a saturated field for sure. Mm-hmm. And so board certified, and also I think there's less than 100 board certified prosecutors in Texas as well. Mm-hmm. So it's a distinguishing aspect.
How do you get this distinction?
Basically, you take a second bar exam. Mm-hmm. So everybody's probably familiar. Lawyers take an exam, 3-day long exam to get their license. Mm-hmm. To be board certified, you have to meet certain metrics, meaning you have to have tried so many cases, written so many appeals to be eligible to sit for a second bar exam called the board exam.
Mm-hmm. So, it's interesting. You start off in defense and went to prosecution. I've known a few defense attorneys that start off in prosecution instead, primarily because they got tired of, the politics of in county or city level law enforcement, whatever else, but also because the money, is probably better. And
then that's a fair switch. And most people do start in prosecution, you do it for 5 or so years, then you go to do private practice after that. That's not uncommon, but my heart really is in prosecution. Is where it's always been. So that's been my focus going forward in criminal law.
Well, that's interesting because, this is dating me quite a bit, but I had 3 or 4 friends in my Baylor days that went to Baylor Law School, and they all went into prosecution. And they primarily did it not because of, the zeal that they had for the job, it's because that was a job and they needed one, as much as anything else. But you went into by choice. That's interesting. That's different. So you've been prosecuted for 10 years. Now you told me something before the show that kind of surprised me. Right now you're not employed, right?
I'm not employed currently. No.
I'll let you explain that story any way you want.
Okay. So I have been working for the Johnson County DA's office for the past 8 years. And that's, the reason I'm running is because I worked for that office. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm running for that office is because I worked there. There's a lot of things which we will get into of why the office is behind the times, needs to change. There's just so many different fronts where things need to be changed. So after, much soul searching, lots of reasons, I decided I wanted to run. So when I filed on, I think it was December 8th, which is a Friday in Austin, I came into work on December 13th. And I was met at the door by my opponent, the district attorney, Mr. Delhanna, and he says, "Are you planning on quitting today?" And I said, "Well, I wasn't planning on quitting today." And I was informed, very curtly that we were going to have an HR meeting in 5 minutes, and I should show up with a resignation letter in hand. And so I showed up to the meeting empty-handed. And I was asked where my letter was, and I said, I didn't intend to resign. I have no intent to undermine him while I was there working for him. I'm just planning on running against him. And then I was promptly fired.
And under what reason? You can't just fire somebody just because of what you're doing running for office.
I mean, legally, I think you can.
I'm sure there's legalities, but what was the excuse given? Because that's not going to go over very well in the public to say, "I fired him because he's running against me." What did he tell you?
He was for running against him.
No, okay. Well, but is it you want to say it that way? I mean, is that going to be the reason? If you asked him, that's what he would say. Well, he ran against me, therefore I fired him.
I'm not sure what. I mean, I could tell you what we said in that conversation. Going forward, I mean, I've heard rumors now that the story is being backfilled of that guy fired for a cause, and I'm running against him because I'm being petty and I'm hurt, and so I'm trying to. That's the only reason I'm running. That makes no sense to me because I mean, the website, all the campaign literature that I already printed out, the amount of work I'd done for months leading up to that is really convenient. That I could anticipate me being fired for a cause, but to that point, I didn't even know what I was fired for if it was for cause.
Well, I would think that if being fired for cause, you'd have to have done something more egregious than just run for office. To be frank, you'd have to show up to work drunk or commit some sort of be accused of some felony or whatever else. Other than just one day you walk in and you're given your walk-up papers. I have Dale Hanna on next week. I'll ask him about it. What his take on that is, and if he doesn't want to talk about it, that's his prerogative. But I think people should know what the situation is now. But it wasn't like you woke up that one day in December and decided, I think I'll run for district attorney. There must be a lot of reasons why.
Oh, there's a ton of reasons why. Yeah, absolutely.
We got time, so let's just go through them.
So I mean, there's a bunch. So I don't know kind of where to start. I guess the best place to start is. I've always been pro law enforcement, but before I became a prosecutor, I didn't really have this huge burning support for the law enforcement, the men and women who actually do the job. And doing the job as prosecutor, I realized like we do not pay them enough, we don't support them enough, we don't respect them enough. What they do is a calling. It's kind of the same thing like for teachers. We as a society have been playing off of this calling and saying they'll do it cheap because they have a drive for it. And I think we've been treating teachers and law enforcement for years.
Oh, well, I won't argue with you that.
So when I see law enforcement in Johnson County being disrespected and I see the relationship between the DA's office and law enforcement deteriorating, it really started to shock me. This is not something that just kind of happened overnight, but it was happening constantly where law enforcement and the DA's office, we just don't get along.
Really? See, I guess I'm out of the loop because I didn't ever pick up on that.
Okay. And this is one of those things you expect a politician to say, try to pick out an issue and say this, I encourage anybody that's hearing this, go find a line patrol officer, a detective somewhere and ask them, how do you feel about the DA's office in Johnson County currently? Do you feel like they're handling your cases? Are they exploring the cases they should? Are you working your tail off to get a case done and it's getting filed and rejected? And you're not given a reason why, even though you submitted a good case that maybe had a confession or video. They're just a completely deteriorated relationship. Now, my opponent's going to come back and say, well, the elected sheriff has endorsed him, the former sheriff's endorsed him, everybody's elected in law enforcement is endorsing him. But that's, to me, is a bunch of people circling the wagon and saying, hey, we got a incumbent protection program, and we're going to back each other because if you look throughout time, everybody that's backing my opponent has either been endorsed by him before or actually been employed by him before. So I think you should kind of weigh those endorsements the best you can.
Well, what would the endorsement say, like you mentioned, of the rank and file officer? Do you think they would go along with that endorsement?
I think they would say, no, they don't agree with it. And I mean, I've heard some people have been told, you're not to even speak out on this issue because your person who is elected has already made his decision, so you can't counter his decision.
That's unfortunate because you do have the right to free speech and all that other business. But I can tell you, my own experience is, they talk about free speech, but they really don't want to hear it.
Oh, absolutely, right.
So that I don't blame the officers for just kind of keeping their heads down because they get caught in the crossfire and they're the ones that'll get hurt. But as far as
they can be fired too, right?
Yes, and it's concerning to hear that the law enforcement and the law adjudication and the courts, the district attorney's office are not on the same page of the hymnal. It sounds like.
Right.
Okay, then in your view, it's the problem of the district attorney, not law enforcement, right?
Yeah. So
right.
I think law enforcement is doing a fantastic job. Now, I think there's always more skills and tools we can give them, and that's something we need to talk about separate as citizens and city council and things like that. But when it comes to, they have to work up. So as law enforcement, you get someone walking in the door, you get a call for service, you have to work that case. And when the case is, if it's good enough to get filed with the DA's office, you file with the DA's office.
Under what criteria then is Mr. Hanna using to file cases or not to file cases?
I wish I could give you an answer of there being criterion. I know of no criterion.
Okay.
Other than the category of cases. I know we do not reject any drug cases at all. Or when I say we, I'm so used to talking about the office, right? But drug cases are always accepted. Family violence cases are generally rejected, or the victims are talked to and encouraged to not pursue.
Generally rejected, is that a good response? Is it the appropriate response, or is that's the response you're getting?
That's the response you're getting, because it's not a good rationale. Generally, the tone in the office is these women are going to quit us eventually, so why not just get rid of the case now?
So these kind of cases are going unprosecuted in this county.
That's my position, yes. And that's what I'm seeing. And that's what's disturbing to me, because you talk to anybody in law enforcement, domestic violence, they're hard because you've got a woman that is stuck in a bad situation. And often she's going to say, because she's either being forced by her abuser or she's in a period in place where he's a sole income winner, whatever it may be, has kids with, multiple factors. It's easier for her just to say, never mind, the violent situation that happened 2 nights ago is down to a palatable level. I just want things to go back to normal. The problem is for her, you talk to anybody that's in the Family Crisis Center here in Johnson County, talk to anybody in law enforcement, the number one predictor of a woman being murdered is past domestic violence. So it is not just this time issue, this call on a Friday issue. This is an issue that's going to escalate to something worse.
So if you are elected, are you going to pick up the pace on those type of cases?
Absolutely. I think you need to completely pick up the case. Mr. Hanna and I had a debate at Lone Star Patriots, and he talked about, it's a waste of resources to do those cases, because eventually those women, they're just going to want to be back with the men. And he listed those reasons. Maybe they want to get back because of kids or whatever. He goes, there's no point to try a case if the prosecutor is the only person in the courtroom that wants a conviction. And I disagree with that. I think you have to take each case by case. But there are times where the woman, she doesn't want the case prosecuted, but the injuries are so bad or the action's so bad, you have to step up. The whole point of law is that the state of Texas is the other party in a criminal case.
That's unfortunate, because I talk to a lot of the nonprofits, and they don't deal directly with victims of assault like the crisis centers will and whatnot, but they deal with the fallout from it.
Right. Broken
homes, homelessness, financial distress, whatever else coming from these unstable relationships, and they talk about it, but they don't deal with it directly. But it is prevalent because of the economic stresses that are going on, because of other factors. I do know that when regardless of what we're reading in the paper, the economy is struggling.
It is,
and it puts pressures on the family, and sometimes those come out in alcoholism or abuse or neglect or whatever else, and they're dealing with all of these things. And I think, I'm surprised a little bit that we are not aggressive in dealing with a wife beater, basically.
Right.
Or a husband beater, if that's the case. I mean, he probably had a couple of those at least.
It does go both ways, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's more common where it's the male hitting the female.
We're generally the bigger, stronger, so absolutely.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But as far as, that's surprising that has not gone aggressively prosecuted.
Well, that's not the only types of cases. I mean, I think drug cases, that office is all over drug cases. You look at any other case, that's where we're falling down. So talk about family violence, let's talk assault and peace officer cases. Talk to law enforcement. They're getting assaulted, particularly after we have the 2020 shift of not only do we, not really respect police officers, now we hate them. There's a lot of more violence happening to our officers. And they're a group of, now they're victims of a crime that we're just not doing a whole lot with those cases at the DA's office.
Why are they so enthusiastic about drug-related cases and not other ones?
I wish this is one of the things that we as the assistants there have tried to really unravel. Like, why is this the most important thing we do? Other than I think it's been a long-term problem. It's been there since the 80s and 90s when my Dale Hanna started prosecuting. And they're still here today, so it's something that's familiar. It's something you can rail against. But new cases, new types of things have been popping up in Johnson County. I do think probably back in the 80s and 90s, drugs were the primary felony threat that we in Johnson County faced. But as time has progressed, the felony threats have changed, like as everything does. And I think we just have not shifted to say we don't have a fight on one front, which is narcotics. We have a fight on multifaceted fronts.
Well, I've been here about 34 years in Johnson County. I live right outside of town, and I taught here, as many of my listeners know, for a long, long time. And the 90s, to me, seemed to be, I would hear more or have students involved in drugs more than I did at the end of my career. Well, maybe they just kept it more quiet, or maybe they kept it more off campus, or whatever else, and maybe it was just as prevalent, and I just didn't hear about it as much. But my first 5 or 6 years at the high school, I thought, wow, there's a lot of this going on in this county, and the kids would tell me, oh yeah, there's a meth lab right outside of town, or whatever else, and that kind of business. Is that still going on in Johnson County?
Meth labs, no. So a lot of drug production has been moved out to China and Mexico. It's much easier to manufacture somewhere else and bring it in. So meth labs, actual creation of the drugs here, it's pretty rare. You may have something like some incretin dab or THC wax, little kind of homegrown stuff like that. But generally, the major narcotics are going to be happening outside the country and being brought in.
Well, yeah, and that's what one of your fellow candidates, Matthew Lucci, brought up last week. He was on the show last Tuesday, and he's going to be on again on the 13th. Then it's, he said that's become a gigantic problem. Sherry Scott says, I volunteered for CASA for years and it was so hard to get the abusers prosecuted. Hardest volunteer job I've ever done. You know Ms. Scott, I believe. I mean, her husband's on the city council, and Sherry also does some community work, blessing boxes and such. But, I've heard that before, that trying to get these cases prosecuted can be trouble. But usually the impression was at the discretion of the individual prosecutor, as opposed to a policy of the office.
It depends on how an office is structured, right? So Johnson County, one of the other complaints I have about the DA's office as a whole is that every decision goes through Mr. Hanna. And so, which can be good and can be bad, right? I think as the office is growing larger and larger, there really should be some more discretion amongst the individual assistants because you can't handle the volume cases that way by having a bottleneck.
If I can interject, you're saying every case has to go through his hands first?
Yes.
Is that the normal way that, say, Tarrant County or Dallas County or Hill County operates?
No. Now, there's some differences. Now, the smaller the county, I think when this started back in 1992, when he was him and the first assistants, there's two attorneys, right? As an office grows, it doesn't become feasible at some point. And I think that's the other maybe reason we're kicking cases, because as the volume goes up, it's harder to be on top of every single case. So the solution is reduce the number of cases.
If you win, assuming you win, are you going to handle it, the office structure, that same way, or are you going to give your prosecutors more latitude?
I think the leader of the office, whoever's elected, the district attorney, his or her job needs to be to create leaders and give them your vision and then see who can work with that. So you give them a point we're going towards, and I don't care how you get there, because people are going to be better at tons of aspects of things than me. There's going to be people better at trial, better at negotiating. That's what you want. You want employees, you want assistants, you want public servants that can do the job and aspects better than you can yourself. And so I think that, eventually it's going to be disseminated out where you have assistants that can basically run the office, make decisions, and the elected individual will be making the bigger decisions. But these minutia about... are we going to reduce this plea offer by 1 year or not? That is just a bottleneck, and it doesn't make things efficient. But to address the question, so when I first started prosecution, I actually was doing prosecution in CPS cases. And one of the main reasons I switched over to doing strictly criminal is for that very reason. I got tired. So CASA is more involved in CPS. So CASA is there, court-appointed special advocates, and they help the court see you have a mom and a dad and you have kids and everybody has attorneys, but CASA is there to kind of be that North Star to say, this is what we see out of this whole mix of stuff, including the department, which is CPS. We think the kid's best interest is here. And so I see that frustration. That's the frustration I saw when I was in that world. And so I said I want to use strictly criminal because I got tired of seeing the abusers, these parents, abuse their kids, do horrible things to their kids, but there were no criminal consequences. I really want to switch over. So yes, absolutely, I understand that frustration.
And that will be a goal of yours, assuming your election. You want to focus more on what Ms. Scott is talking about.
Absolutely.
And but we're not. How many prosecutors do we have?
That's a good question. I don't know the current number. The office is falling apart. That's the other thing. So the first assistant has left 2 years ago. Before that, we had the first assistant for 20-something years had left. People are quitting left and right. And everybody has their reasons, I'm sure. But whatever the reasons are, the office is not fully staffed. What you really need, so there are 3 district courts. You need about, honestly, 3 prosecutors per court to keep the volume of cases going. That would just be to keep it going. Right now, the way I understand it, I think one of the courts has 1 attorney, another court has 1 attorney, and maybe 1 is not staffed at all right now. I'm not sure because I'm not there anymore, but I've heard about the people quitting in the reassignment. The current capital case, which I don't really want to talk about because I don't want to mess that up, is pulling a bunch of resources to try that. But there needs to be more people in that office. So it generally, I think, is about 15 prosecutors.
Is that a function of the county budget, or is that a function of just we're letting these places go unfilled?
It's a mixture of both. So one is, and we had this also in a previous debate Mr. Hanna and I had, is that when you're there as an assistant, you try to say, these are some things I think we could change around here. And one of the things that's been suggested was we only post on one website. There's a website out there called tdca.com. It's for prosecutors. If you're a seasoned prosecutor, maybe you know about it. And so that's the one job board you go to. Well, we're just not getting applications. So when someone leaves the office, we're not getting new applications. And so then the question is, what are we going to do? Well, any person that wants to address the issue goes, we're trying the same thing. It's not working anymore. Maybe we should get on LinkedIn or Indeed. Or my suggestion was we need to be going to law schools. We have 2 law schools within 30 minutes of the office.
Right.
Have a table at career day and say, Johnson County is looking for prosecutors. You know, have you ever considered a career in prosecution? Most people you talk to up in Tarrant County and Dallas, you say Johnson County, they go, is that in the Panhandle? People don't know. It sounds silly, but they don't know. And so being there and recruiting people, and at this debate, I mentioned that. I mentioned it before in the office. And you can see the debate online. His response is the same as it is to anybody in the office that has a suggestion for a new way of doing things. He goes, I would rather have no prosecutors than have people straight out of law school.
Where would this debate be on? I mean, what social media?
So this would be on the Lone Star Patriots had a forum.
Okay.
And on that forum, there was, I think there was like 8 different races being debated.
Right.
But it's a great place to go to look at the whole swath. I think it goes anything from Congress down to your constable's race in Johnson County.
They do that, I think, every year.
They do. It was fantastic.
Well, I am concerned, not just as, our conversation here, but as a citizen, all right? Because I don't get Burleson police. I get county sheriffs, which is fine. I don't have any complaints at all, but I'd like to know if something happened that there would be some retribution or some sort of consequences to it, as opposed to, well, we're sure sorry about that, or we'll put you in line and whatever else. That kind of bothers me, as a citizen, because a good number of us live outside of municipal police protection,
right?
And so we rely on the county sheriffs, and we rely on the district attorney to bring those people to justice if they commit some sort of crime. We don't want to be left out there, in some kind of situation where we're unprotected.
Absolutely.
And I'm just surprised a little bit, but the drug thing, again on that, you're saying you're seeing a lot of it. I know Mr. Lucci said that's one of his, like I said, one of his primary objectives in running is because he's very unhappy with the lack of enforcement at the border. And we're all paying a price for that.
We are.
And you're seeing that yourself. You're in real time. Are we really having more fentanyl problems than ever, or is it just something that's the media? I mean,
no, fentanyl has definitely been a big thing. I remember one of the first fentanyl cases that we prosecuted in Johnson County, I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago. And it was just the first time we even heard of fentanyl. It was also in liquid form. Now the big thing is the Perk 30. So, what looks like a Percocet, it says, has 30 on it, but it's fentanyl is what it is. I don't know why this become the most predominant thing that we're having people having problems with. Maybe because we're maybe more knowledgeable about it. Methamphetamine can kill you. Heroin can kill you. Fentanyl is a dangerous game you're playing, and we usually find out about it more often because someone dies, and then because of the death, you find out about the dealer, and you kind of work up the chain. But fentanyl is prevalent. I mean, we just had a case recently in Burleson where a girl was hopped up on fentanyl. When I say hopped up, she was actually passing out and just rolling down Wilshire, completely just impaired.
Well, and that's not the kind of scene you want to see in Burleson. And I appreciate the fact that y'all are so diligent about the drug cases, but I don't think it should be one as opposed to the other. It should be across the board. And,
Absolutely.
Whether it's burglary or carjacking or whatever else, we'd still, if my car got stolen, I want y'all to drop on that guy like the wrath of God, and not like, well, we're going to negotiate and we'll see what we can do.
Right.
And this other stuff. And there have been cases that, I'm not going to, go through all the ones I read on social media or Facebook about this particular case or that particular case. But it seems like there's this kind of comment is that the sentencing and the pursuit of these people is not what they want it to be. How much control do you have over the sentencing aspect? I mean, ultimately it is the judge, but how much do you have to say 5 years as opposed to suspended sentence or something like that?
Well, I mean, as an assistant, pretty much zero. The office, like I said, everything goes through Mr. Hanna, so he makes the decision on that.
So have you ever worked on a case you thought this guy needs to go to jail for 10 years and it comes back 6 months and a slap on the wrist?
Absolutely. I mean, if you want an example, so another types of cases we don't prosecute are animal cruelty cases.
Oh, that's wrong.
And so there was one where this kid, we have it on video, beat this goat to death for 15 minutes. And he would take breaks, come back, curb stomp the goat. But the prevailing wisdom was goats kind of have it coming. And so this kid went from a felony down to a misdemeanor to deferred. And on that case, I was saying, this is the guy that's going to, I know he's 19. I get it. But he's going to have a kid. And the way he treated that goat is going to be when that kid is 2 o'clock in the morning crying, you're going to have a problem.
Absolutely. I believe that to be true.
Just a year later, he gets involved in a road rage incident, and he smashes a kid's car and drags it through an intersection. So he's back out doing felonies still. He hasn't stopped. But we should have done something on that. When someone is torturing an animal to death, I think something needs to happen there because that's the biggest. I mean, you ask any profiler, that is the first predictor to sadistic behavior towards human beings later.
I just, so I kind of wrap my mind around this. So you work on a case, this guy needs to go to jail for 5 years, and he come back basically with nothing.
Right.
Which is what I think a lot of people are frustrated with. How much is that a function of, space in the jailhouse? I mean, or is that, why, in other words, would somebody who deserves to go to jail 5 to 7 years, whatever time frame, why would the DA be motivated to just basically let the guy go on a slap of the wrist?
Well, so on the goat case, it was just simply Mr. Hanna is a farmer, and there's a disconnect between the way he views animals, and for him, it was just goats are frustrating. So he could see a situation where a goat could be killed.
Yeah, see, Jackie Jones is asking the same question. Why was he not prosecuted for killing the goat? You know Miss Jones, by any chance? She runs a political page on Facebook that you might want to check out every now and then.
I will.
They've been very complimentary of you on that page, so you might want to check it out.
I'll check it out.
And political facts.
Okay.
Anyway, I guess what we read sometimes out here, we don't know all the details. We don't know what's going on, so we try to give like some latitude in our opinion. But sometimes we see this guy got off with nothing. All right. And that just is very frustrating.
Right.
Now, I understand that sometimes maybe there are extenuating circumstances or facts the public doesn't know.
Correct.
That we don't, we're not there in the discussions and find out really that, okay, it is more appropriate for a lighter sentence or maybe even, drop the charges.
Right.
Because we're not there for it. But it just seems like this happens more often than not.
So to be fair to Mr. Hanna or any other prosecutor, I think what you said is absolutely correct. Without looking at specific cases, it's hard because you're always going to sit there and you're going to read a case and go, man, I don't like the way that turned out. But there always are other factors. So without talking about specific cases, it's hard for me to say why a case turned out a certain way.
And also the arrest sometimes gets more publicity than the actual final verdict. And
that's true too.
And we do believe in a system where you're innocent until proven guilty, unless you're dealing with the IRS. But I'm just saying, if you got a situation where you do want to be fair, but I don't know. It just seems like, how many times does a guy have to be arrested and tried and convicted before finally the hammer drops on somebody?
Right.
Because sometimes it's like this is his third offense.
It depends. So let's take a case. Let's take an actual example. So, like I gave you the example of assault and peace officers. So there is an officer from Cleburne who was making a DWI arrest. He was putting a young lady in the back of the car. She's 23 years old. She's intoxicated. And while he's buckling her in, she latches down with her mouth on his ear and nearly bites his ear off. When that case was filed, so that's a second-degree felony. When that case is filed, the DA's office, the rec on that, the recommendation is just simple probation. And even the assistants are like, why aren't we at least like recommending trial or something more than just a basic probation for this girl? And we were told just leave it alone. Don't ask questions about it. Leave it alone. Since being terminated from the office, I've learned that she has a very loose relationship with, like, her mother works for one of the constables. And because of that, that's the reason why she's getting different treatment.
That's another thing is also different treatment for different situations, or the similar situations, actually, how I should put it, that sometimes there's arbitrary reasons for why this case is pursued and this one is not, why these charges are dropped, these are not.
Well, they seem arbitrary when you don't have to, connect the dots, right? But once you start connecting some dots, some of them aren't so arbitrary as they would first seem.
Well, that has been a criticism, is that your relationship with the leadership of the county and DA included is a factor in how you'll be treated by the law.
No, I think that's true. I think that's absolutely true.
Now, I've had any problems with the law in this county, so I can't speak from personal experience. But I've had a couple others say, no, if you know the right people, you're not going to be, prosecuted with the same degree of vigor or looked into or investigated or whatever else.
Right. No, I mean, one of our commissioner's sons is a car thief, and I know specifically that he was contacted to say, we're about to do a search warrant at that house. Make sure those cars are gone. That kind of stuff happens a lot. And I think it's disturbing.
Really? I didn't know that case. I didn't hear about that. See, we don't have, it's not good to not have a daily newspaper. We like to do what we can here on this humble podcast. And there's also the Burleson Buzz. I think, have you ever talked with Cody O'Brien?
I don't think so.
You got to talk to him. He does a bi-weekly a blog on Burleson News, like city council, school stuff, things of that nature. So we ought to put y'all together because he's
I appreciate
really
that.
good. But it just, we don't get the news. So, a lot of times we don't hear about this. I didn't know about this particular situation with a car thief.
Well, this is not going to make, this is stuff that happens internally within the power structure of Johnson County. And it's never going to make it outside. Now, your individual deputies know about it. Your individual ADA, the assistant district attorneys or county attorneys, they know about it. But it's not something the public is ever going to know.
Well, I do know that DAs have a great deal of authority and
Tremendous
amount of authority. And what they emphasize is what is going to be emphasized. When I was in Baylor, the McLennan County DA really wasn't particularly hard on what we would consider as students, minor transgressions. Then one came in the late 80s, and he came down like thunder upon college students, all, for whatever reason. And it's fine. It's all great. I wasn't part of either scene, but it seems like the DA drives what is going to be the emphasis of the district.
I mean, that is the point of the district attorney, honestly. So your district attorney maybe is the most powerful elected person within your county. There's really not much of an appeal past the district attorney. He or she makes the decisions for felony cases. You do have the check of the grand jury. Grand jury makes a decision in all cases. Is there probable cause to go forward?
But isn't it true that most district attorneys can pretty much get grand juries to move along with what they think is important? I mean, you got a bunch of citizens like me on a grand jury, and the DA of our county comes and says, this is a serious case, and we're going to just innately trust that.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, yeah.
There was that old joke,
And a ham sandwich?
Yeah, right, and a ham sandwich, yeah. I just always think that when they get in these grand jury situations and they're going through all these possible indictments, they're going to true bill almost all of them. Because I don't know.
Right.
And quite often the defense does not show up at these grand jury hearings. Is that correct?
It's not so much that. Usually the only people that are authorized by statute to be present is the grand jury, the district attorney, and then whoever's presenting. Defense have to be invited. They don't have access. It's not they're being lazy or not doing their job. They just don't have access to it.
I was told that they really, even if they get invited, they usually don't go because they don't want to show their cards that soon.
Sometimes, I mean, there are times we have invited defense to come, and every time we've invited, they've showed up. So.
Okay, well, good. Okay, but maybe it was just this particular guy. That was his policy, but it was it just troublesome that our law enforcement branch and our adjudication branch are so disjointed,
right,
and understaffed, and we're letting cases just fall through the cracks, or they have time expiring, or something like that. I mean, time limits on it and all this other stuff. And,
right.
There was one particular case that lasted like 3 years in this county. And it just like, why is this happening? But I don't want to get into details of that. But it just, every time it seemed like it just never would come to trial. And there's a couple of other cases that honestly I'd like to know what's the status of, because maybe they've been resolved and I just didn't hear about it. But is there a way we could find these things out?
I mean, you can go on the internet, and if you know the name of the defendant, you can tap it into there's website and the court docket, and it could tell you if the case has been resolved or not.
Well, I just remember a couple of years ago we had a Burleson officer shot.
Officer Allard?
Yes. And I have never heard a resolution to that situation.
Case is still pending.
Yeah, 2 years. Okay, it was like April of 21, wasn't it? It's like 2.5 years ago, and it's still pending. It hadn't gone to trial yet. Why is that?
Because it's not been resolved. I don't want to talk too much about the details of that.
I got it. I guess you're right. I can mouth off about it, but I guess you're kind of more having to be a bit more discreet. But that's another thing that I think from people outside the system, like, why is justice not a bit more swift, so to speak?
Now, I will say in general, not to that case, but every time I've been on a case and talked to victims, explain justice, the will of justice, they turn slowly. And so cases don't get resolved as quickly. Now, we can make them quicker by increasing the staffing at the office. There's always going to be hurdles and bottlenecks to everything, but it generally takes about, for a felony case, if it's not going to be pled out, if eventually going to get to trial, an average 2 years, 3 years before it ever gets tried.
How about, is DUI a problem in this county? Because I bring that up because right now there's a petition going around to open liquor stores in Burleson. And as far as I understand that they are about a couple hundred names short, but they may get them. Sherry Scott asked us, why wasn't anyone charged? I assume she's asking about the officer that was shot.
Someone was charged for that. They were.
Okay.
That's also tied up with the murder case as well, same defendant.
Right. And that's what I was thinking of also, besides shooting the officer, somebody got killed that day.
In the same episode, yeah.
Yeah, and I just wondered, that has not been resolved. I thought maybe I just missed it or whatever else, but whatever. I'd like to see some resolution to see what happens with that. But anyway, like I said, there's a potential that we're going to open up liquor stores, and a lot of the opponents to this talk about possible or probable increase in DUI. Do we have a DUI problem in this county?
Oh, we do. Every county has a DUI problem. When it goes from on the felony level, so driving while intoxicated, generally first offense, second offense are going to be misdemeanors. Right? So the district attorney handles strictly felonies. Now, for a DUI to be a felony, you have to have 2 prior convictions for driving while intoxicated to be called DWI, third or more. Or you have a child passenger under, I think it's 15, in the vehicle to make it a stage of felony.
Well, I remember my sole trial experience as a juror about 10 years ago was on a probation case where the prosecution was restricted on how they could present the case because they couldn't present prejudicial evidence or something like that, or his background. Turns out, he's being tried for felony DUI, which they kept kind of trying to get us to read between lines, which means it's more than that. This is not his first rodeo. It turns out in the punishment phase of the trial, he had a record a mile long, and we didn't know about that during the prosecution phase. So it was interesting. My joke about when I joke, it's a funny story, because I was on a jury with 9 women and 2 other men, and during the pleadings in the end, there's tears and all this other stuff, and I'm afraid these women are going to start, buying into all this. And so I was thinking, let's try to get this guy like 15 years, because this he's the bad dude. And those ladies around the table went 20, 20, 20, 20, because isn't it 2 to 20 on a second degree felony?
Yes. And
they were all going, and that's 3 guys. Hey, ladies, hey. So we ended up with 17 and a half years. And, I don't know. I have no idea if he's still in the lockup or not, but it was just funny, because maybe my bias was showing when I thought these ladies would be all tenderhearted, and they were going, they'd have taken him outside and shot him.
Right.
You know, so
Then that's because it's such a threat, right? Driving while intoxicated is not just this simple thing. Like we know where it leads: manslaughter, murder. So I mean, it's a huge problem, and it's a huge problem within Johnson County. How the liquor stores opening will affect it, I don't know.
I've heard both stories. You know, I've heard that if you don't have to drive to Fort Worth, but see, I mean, the thing is, you don't consume at the store.
Correct.
And
You
so,
shouldn't be.
Yeah, shouldn't be, right. That's the law anyway. And there are some economic implications of this because, like, you go to Wild a lot. Chris and Nathan can only buy from that one dealer down in Alvarado at retail prices.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, you can only buy within the county. There's like another one in Rio Vista who doesn't bother with restaurants, but it's real small, you know. But the one at Liquor Depot is the sole source of alcohol for every restaurant you and I go to.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's one reason why I can't sign it because I'm not a Burleson citizen since I live right outside it. But I've fallen on the side of I think we need this because it helps our restaurants out, and I don't know if it will appreciably increase the amount of alcohol abuse or DWI. Am I wrong in that assumption?
What I've seen from cases, generally when someone, right before they get stopped, they're usually coming from it. Then they happen between 12 and 2 o'clock in the morning, usually leaving a bar is what the problem is. There are some people, when you have your day DWIs, they've been day drinking at their house in liquor or something like that. I can't think of a single case where someone had driven up to a liquor store and was coming back. Now, I've seen some where you drive to the convenience store to get more beer to re-up, which I'm assuming you could have the same effect from the liquor store as well. But
you've already been intoxicated prior to going to the liquor store, to the 7-Eleven or whatever else, and so and people are going to get alcohol and drink at home. It just I don't know. I just rather not have them on the road as long as it have to be to go all the way to Fort Worth or Alvarado for it.
That's your point there.
Yeah, but it's we'll see what the citizens of Burleson say about that.
I think the bars are. I mean, I think that's the bigger problem. Is most people are at a bar, you drink too much and you leave, and that's where the problems have been happening.
Yeah, and this is not a proposition to open up full-on bars. In Burleson, you have to. It's like 51-49 ratio, right, between food and alcohol. Things of that nature, and so we don't just have, in a lot of cases, just in Burleson itself, just plain bars. You almost always are restaurant bars, or in Wild's case, it's a cigar bar. That's their main business is the humidor. But as far as I just wondered, as an attorney, as a district attorney, what your stance might be on that particular issue.
On having liquor stores in Burleson, I don't really see a huge problem with it.
Okay. Well, neither do I, but I understand, there's going to be some pushback, and that's their right to have it, that's to have that opinion. But I just was curious from a law enforcement and from a prosecution side of it, what your thoughts on that matter were. I
mean, the world would be better if no one consumed alcohol because you wouldn't have all those problems. But that aside, alcohol is part of our American culture. I mean, it is what it is. I don't think adding a liquor store into the equation is going to make things worse. Because like you said, you're just going to drive to Fort Worth, or I imagine Hill County has liquor stores.
I don't know. I don't go that far. I know this. I know all about the liquor laws in the restaurants because of a Wild Cigar. They told me about this a couple of years ago when they were on the show, and I was astounded that really was the case. But I just, you're concerned because you don't want to add to an already big problem. I just wonder if it was a big problem. Maybe I mean,
it's a big problem. I don't know if it's going to make it worse per se. I think that'd be a question for other jurisdictions that have liquor stores. Like Fort Worth would be a perfect example. They have liquor stores. They have bars. When they switched over, how many DWIs do they have of people leaving the liquor store? I don't know.
I guess that'd be a really minute stat to find. We're coming close on time. Okay. I'd like for you to have the last word. If you want to look directly into the camera, that's the one that Taylor normally uses, and you could maybe use this in part of your social media, whatnot. But you tell the listeners here in the vast listening audience what you would like for them to know about Tim Good.
Okay, I think basically in conclusion, what it is I have seen the deterioration of the relationships with law enforcement, the DA's office. And we can't be safe unless we have a working, healthy relationship with each agency. That's also been affected by the limited technology we have. Every agency still files paper copies of their cases with us, which is a huge waste of their time. The office is antiquated. We can't keep staff there. The culture needs to change within the office, whether it's the way we approach hiring, way we approach grooming and training new attorneys to be trial attorneys. There's a lot of change that needs to happen. Then across the board in Johnson County, the good old boy system, which we've referenced a little bit here, of you get a better outcome maybe because of the attorney you hire or who you know. It's just not justice. And I think that's the biggest thing I've heard while I'm out on the campaign trail talking to people. Johnson County is fully aware that this exists, but they haven't seen a change to it. And I'm just going to promise and straight out come out and say what I've told everybody that says, hey, I want to support you. I want to put a sign in your yard. I want to give you $100 check, whatever it may be, is all I could promise you in return is you're going to get somebody who's going to do his absolute best at the job. But there's not going to be any backdoor favors or any kind of favoritism because justice doesn't have the ability to have the flexibility where I know you, so I give you a little extra.
So you telling me you being on my show is going to cut me some slack in the future? Okay, I got it.
Right. That's exactly what it is. That's what what it needs to come down to.
Yeah, I know. I appreciate that because we do need impartial justice. But Jackie Jones says, good luck. I hope you win. I guess my last question before we drop out is, what kind of response are you getting?
Very positive. I've been amazed. When I never planned to run. And so when I saw this all happen, I said, somebody needs to do it, and that somebody eventually became me. I just took a step out. I had no connections with anybody. I met a ton of people who've kind of helped me work up the chain. I've been endorsed by Ken Paxton, Sid Miller, Alan West. And that's simply because I was able to meet these gentlemen, show my platform, explain what I'm trying to do, and get their endorsement. So it's been a very positive, very amazing, the grassroots response. I'm just completely humbled by it.
How can someone get a hold of you, contact you? Do we have the webpage, Taylor?
I can pull it up.
Okay.
I got the logo.
All right. But so how would they contact you? Say, I want to contribute. I want to have a yard sign or anything like that.
Webpage is the best place to go. There's ways to contact me through email. Facebook link is also on the webpage. It's goodforda.com. Go there. Facebook is where this is a static site, so I've got all my positions on there. But if you want to see what's currently happening, where you can meet with me, we've got an event in Burleson on the 5th at the Old Town Brewery. There's a bunch of information on Facebook as things change and we have new developments.
Well, I wish you the best of luck.
I appreciate that.
You know,
it's not fun. Campaigning is not what I...
No, it isn't. You know, people have asked me before, why don't you run for something, Allard? You're always yakking and talking.
Those are the people who never run.
Yeah. Yeah, really. I don't think I have the stamina for it. And whatever, but I appreciate what you're doing. I wish you the best of luck. Contact me in the future, you know, if you'd like to, visit again.
I appreciate that.
All right. I'm pretty booked, but I bet Taylor and I could squeeze you in if you want to have one more shot. Early voting starts in, 2 weeks, right?
February 20th.
Yeah, and it's 3 weeks. Okay, right. Yeah. So let's see what we got.
All right.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Brad, I appreciate you.
No problem. Bye-bye.